All right, so hello everyone. This is attorney Robyn McCoy of Robyn Legal with Political Coffee with Robyn and Tracey. And I want to welcome you all here and we have some honored guests here today. So I'm going to turn it over to Tracey so she can introduce herself, and then I will go ahead and start introducing the guests.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Tim Martin, aka Tracey, and welcome to Political Coffee's 2-hour special on Michigan's new clean slate law, which will go effective on April 11th. And we hope that you leave this forum today with a better understanding of what Michigan's clean slate law is. It has to do with expungements and how to prepare for the upcoming effective date, which again is April 11th. We're very honored to be joined today by this distinguished and illustrious panel of guests, including federal and state lawmakers and lawyers. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video and ring that bell. Okay, Robyn, back to you.
Yes, okay, thank you, Tracey. So at this time, I'm going to introduce our Congresswoman Debbie Dingle. She is my Congresswoman, and she is of the 12th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Where she's made it a priority to be a voice for the Midwest on issues that matter most to working families. And actually, I know she's pressed for time, so I'm gonna actually just turn it over to her to give us some opening remarks. So Congresswoman Dingle.
Well, Robyn, thank you. And I just want to tell everybody on here how great Robyn is, how much she has educated me on the issues, included me, helped me understand, and how lucky we are to have her as an advocate. And to everybody that's here, everybody here is a wonderful friend that we work with on so many of the issues that need to be righted and justice. And I'm honored to be with all of you today. I want to keep these remarks brief so you can turn it over to the state leaders, the advocates, and the experts who are really on the front lines of these conversations. And everybody here constantly educates me, each other, and works together. But I also want to say this discussion is so critical. And I'm so glad that you're doing this today. For years, actually decades, advocates have been telling us that our prisons and jails are overcrowded. That's why Congress passed the First Step Act in 2018. I supported it, and why I've continued to fight for legislation like the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act that will bring real justice to our communities, particularly the communities of color that have been hurt the most by the misguided war on drugs. Under the First Step Act, there have been 3,706 fair sentencing retroactive sentence reductions and 3,163 compassionate releases or reductions in sentences. But as I've learned, I know, and I've worked with all of you, it's far from enough. Too many people in our prisons were left with nowhere to turn as this pandemic ravaged our communities. Nearly 300,000 people were infected. Nearly 2,000 died that we know of because we're not collecting this data. So we can't get the facts. And instead of protecting them, too many communities spent more time trying to argue that those cases shouldn't count in their local data. It's that very behavior of dehumanizing prisoners that led us to this point. We need to fundamentally reform the way our incarceration system works in this country, because right now, too many individuals are stuck in the troubling cycle of recidivism. As a nation, we should have a system that makes it easier for individuals to re-enter society who have properly served their time and want to do better moving forward. Through conversations like this one today, we can begin the hard work of doing just that. I am a partner in this. And I want to close with this, that people really need to think about what it's like to be, I'm going to just use marijuana, a young Black man in America or a young white man in America, and how different they are treated, and how too many young Black men end up in prison, which defines their future for the rest of their lives. Yet they've done less than that young white man who might not even have charges pressed, let alone what the outcome is. We have to do something about this. Justice matters. So all of you, thank you for having this conversation today, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Robyn.
Thank you, Congresswoman Dingle. I appreciate you being here this week. And I know you were with us last week where we did that wonderful program with the Black women lawyers in Michigan for Women's History Month. This is still Women's History Month. So thank you for taking your time. I know whenever I have an event and you're able to come out and support it, you do. So I definitely appreciate that. And so I'm going to actually turn it over to Tracey to introduce the first set of panelists. And so Tracey, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Yes, thank you, Robyn. And so we'll begin with State Representative Donna Lasinski, who's known as the strong local voice that Washtenaw County deserves. She's billed as our hard-working legislator. Donna Lasinski represents Northern and Western Washtenaw County and Chelsea, Dexter, Manchester, Saline, and Whitmore Lake in the State House. She is honored, she says she is honored to have earned the trust and support of the 52nd House District voters to represent them for a third term in the Michigan State House of Representatives. Donna Lasinski is making a difference in Lansing by giving a voice to families, business owners, and community members. As the state representative for the 52nd District, Donna brings her energy, skills, and experience as a dedicated school board trustee, business owner, community leader, and elected official. And when you look at Donna Lasinski's community involvement, it reads like a who's who of social justice organizations. Actually, the list is so voluminous, I can't read them all, but just to give you an idea, she's the immediate past chair of the Ann Arbor PTO Council, Success by Six, that's through the United Way of Washtenaw County, the Washtenaw Literacy Council, Children's Literacy Network of Washtenaw County, League of Women Voters, one of my personal favorites, the University of Michigan Alumni Association, the NAACP, the Image Awards are tonight, and the Migrant Children Reading Program. Welcome, Representative Lasinski, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and really look forward to this discussion with everyone. As House Democratic leader, we are really looking forward to moving this package forward. We know that it is critical to have expungement legislation. It allows folks to, when they are applying for housing, when they are applying for a job, to legally and lawfully state that they have not been convicted of a crime, misdemeanor, or felony. We know that this package will allow automatic expungement. Before this package passed through, less than 6% of folks who were even eligible for expungement were going through the process because it was so difficult and cumbersome and expensive. The automatic expungement part of this package and what we'll discuss today is critical to helping folks get a fast track to a blank slate, to being able to have that fresh opportunity to participate in housing opportunities, employment opportunities. And as we look at the challenges to getting this law implemented, that's where our House Democratic Caucus and myself as Democratic House leader have already started the negotiations to ensure that we have the appropriations, the money that's necessary to put in place the computer systems and the other mechanisms that we need to make sure we didn't just make a law that enables automatic expungement, but we're actually doing the work to get it done. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation, and I'm excited to be here. Again, thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Wonderful, thank you, Representative Lasinski. And now we turn to Nick Roumel. I love his Twitter bio because it's very succinct. It says he's a civil rights lawyer, a foodie, and traveler, and he lists his favorite quote, "Be kind, for everyone is fighting a battle." But Nick Roumel is also a trial lawyer with over 30 years of experience in state and federal courts. He began his career at the Free Legal Aid Clinic, we affectionately call it FLAC, in Detroit, helping victims of domestic violence. From there, he served the legal needs of Detroit's indigent population at the Wayne County Neighborhood Legal Services until 1989, when he moved to the University of Michigan Student Legal Services for 14 years. Since then, he has been exclusively in private practice. Attorney Roumel has published and presented on matters as diverse as the immigration consequences of criminal convictions. And I do want to turn the conversation toward that in terms of expungement. He's also worked on disclosure and consequences of criminal records and educational matters such as bullying, Title IX, and teen suicide. He has been quoted and his case is featured in local and national media, including Newsweek, The Economist, and ESPN, among others. Interestingly, Mr. Roumel, Attorney Roumel, is also an avid cook, and he has authored well, not the book, but it is a column called May It Please the Palate for the legal news throughout Michigan, and he has written regularly for the Michigan sports blog called MGO Blog as Counterpunt. Nick, welcome to the panel, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tracey. I thought I gave you about a 2-sentence bio and you were too gracious, and I appreciate it. I am in the midst. I'm so glad to be here with you again and with all of these illustrious people. I'm just going to say a few words because there's so many folks. Right now, I'm writing a summary of all of the clean slate legislation that so many of you here worked on and fought for that will be so helpful to my clients. I do a lot of employment law, and I'm writing a summary of it for the Institute for Continuing Legal Research. So it's a resource on the page to help other attorneys and kind of a step-by-step process as to how to go through it. And what I've been excited about is that this is making it so much easier to expunge offenses. And as Congresswoman Dingle noted, only a tiny percentage of people who are actually eligible apply. So I'm excited to see that there's the automatic set-aside provision that the legislation has. But you brought up one point that's important, and I challenge our legislators to keep working on this, which is that it only goes so far. Yes, as Representative Lasinski said, you can state, I've never been convicted of a crime. But many, many employers, licensed professions, et cetera, can ask you about arrests that did not result in conviction or were set aside. There's always the internet. There's sex registry for people who have had certain offenses set aside. For immigration consequences, as you pointed out, Tracey, those are considered convictions even if they've been expunged. And landlords might ask about arrests, for example, that didn't result in conviction. And we want to keep working on those to make sure that we do have the clean slate and a second chance. And it goes without saying, too, as was pointed out earlier, that there's racial disparities, too, that there's statistics that show that people of color still have difficulty getting a job without a record over white people who do have records. And so that's a challenge that maybe we're working together can make some small progress in. Thanks for having me, and thanks for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Nick. Excellent. And next we turn to Delphia T. Simpson. She was raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She received her BA in English from Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and then received her Juris Doctor from the University of Maryland School of Law. After admission to the State Bar of Maryland, she practiced family law at the Legal Aid Bureau of Maryland. While there, she was promoted to chief attorney for the family law unit and served in that position until she returned to Michigan. In 2001, when presented with the opportunity to practice in the area of civil rights, she began working with the ACLU of Michigan as its racial justice staff attorney. In that role, she focused on solving racial profiling issues, and she was co-counsel on the East Point, Michigan bicycling while Black case. In 2003, Attorney Simpson joined the Office of the Washtenaw County Public Defender in Ann Arbor as its managing attorney, led by Lloyd E. Powell, and she continued her work to address racial profiling issues in Washtenaw County. In February 2016, she was asked to become the interim public defender, and in 2017, she was promoted to Chief Public Defender for Washtenaw County, where she serves today. Ms. Simpson is very active in the community and serves on several nonprofit boards, and the Vanzetti Hamilton Bar Association awarded Ms. Simpson the Frederick Douglass Racial Justice and Harmony Awards, and in 2017, she received the Washtenaw County Leadership Award. We're so proud and happy to have Delphia Simpson join us on the panel today. Welcome, and how are you? Delphia, you're on mute.
If you could unmute yourself, or I might be able to, let's see.
I'm so sorry. I thought I could get through a Zoom meeting without doing that, but I've been unsuccessful so far.
All of us.
So I am so thrilled to be on this panel this afternoon and be with all of you this afternoon to talk about an issue that we see here at the Public Defender's Office up close. And we, in the past, before the prior administration with the prosecutor's office, that the expungement law was often used as an additional punishment for people, where they, we would get plea offers that were just beyond just beyond allowing people to even apply for expungements. And I'm very excited to see that the clean slate law is expanded. And what I know about the current prosecutor's office, I don't believe they will be using that at all. And I'm sure they'll speak to that when they get the opportunity. And I'm very excited about what this can do for people. We often get calls from individuals talking about convictions they had many years ago, and then it's discovered and they lose employment. And so to make this process easier, faster, and more expansive will help a tremendous number of people. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone on the panel, learning and sharing this afternoon.
I am too as well, Delphia, and thank you again for joining us. And speaking of prosecutors, we have two in the House, beginning with Atty. Savit. He is the elected prosecutor for Washtenaw County and will serve the citizens of Washtenaw County for a 4-year term beginning January 1st, 2021. He's already working and making national headlines, I should add. Ellie has dedicated his career to public service. He formerly served as a law clerk to the late great Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was a civil rights and public interest attorney, and started his career as a public school teacher. Most recently, Ellie served as a City of Detroit senior legal counsel, where he led criminal justice reform work for Michigan's largest city. Ellie is also a nationally recognized attorney who has led public interest lawsuits against some of the country's toughest adversaries such as banks, the opioid industry, slumlords, and corporate polluters. Ellie continues to teach at the U of M as a lecturer, and throughout his career in public service, Ellie has witnessed firsthand the cascading consequences of a broken criminal justice system. He ran for Washtenaw County prosecutor to ensure equitable justice for all the Washtenaw County residents, and he is humbled by the faith and trust that the voters of Washtenaw County have placed in him, he says, and now he's making headlines, as I mentioned a moment ago, across the nation and the globe as the reformist prosecutor and for championing social justice policies such as no cash bail. Welcome, Prosecutor Savit. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's wonderful to be here with so many great people. I'll pick up on what Delphia said, and just be clear about this. We're not doing things that way anymore. We are not trying to saddle people with criminal records, much less criminal records that can't be expunged. Indeed, Victoria and I's philosophy is that wherever possible, we should be seeking to avoid saddling somebody with a criminal record in the first place. If we can avoid that and still address the underlying thing that brought somebody into the criminal legal system, be it substance abuse, mental health issues, behavioral health issues, that is so much better for all of us. And one of the reasons is everybody has alluded to is not just because of the tremendous racial and socioeconomic inequities that we see coming out of our criminal legal system, but also at its root, when we saddle people with criminal records unnecessarily, it adversely impacts public safety because the things that a criminal record prevents you from doing, getting housing, getting jobs, continuing their education. Those are exactly the things that we should want people to be doing to prevent recidivism. Those are the effective interventions. And so it's so counterproductive what we do when we saddle people with criminal records, prevent them from getting housing, prevent them from employment opportunities, prevent them from continuing their education, and then act surprised when they wind up right back in the criminal legal system. So in the prosecutor's office, of course, we're working on this moving forward, but why the clean slate law is so important is to allow people that have done everything right and still are carrying around a criminal record to move forward and with a clean slate. So we are excited about this. We are not going to be fighting expungements in the prosecutor's office, and indeed we're working together with our partners here in Washtenaw County to affirmatively assist people in getting their criminal records cleared. Now that may seem odd for a prosecutor to do, right? Because prosecutors are the ones that got it on there in the first place. But Victoria and I believe that this is probably the best thing that we can do to ensure long-term rehabilitation and to ensure public safety. So this is both an equity issue, but at root, giving people a clean slate, giving people a second chance, allowing them to move forward with their lives is something we should all want because it meaningfully impacts public safety for the better.
Thank you, Prosecutor Savit. I am looking forward to hearing your opinion and remarks on expungements for first-time OWI, no injury. We know that the Governor Whitmer, did do a pocket veto, and there's currently legislation pending. So we'll pick up on that a little later in the broadcast. But now we turn to Prosecutor Savit's Chief Assistant Prosecuting Attorney, Victoria M. Burton Harris, who's accompanied today by the littlest executive officer in the United States of America, I believe. Victoria Burton Harris serves as the Chief Assistant Prosecutor for Washtenaw County. She was appointed to this position January 1st, 2021 by Prosecutor Savit. Victoria is a native of Flint and a graduate of Flint Southwestern Academy. She earned a BA in Political Science and African American Studies from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. She graduated from Wayne State University Law School in 2012. Now, in 2014, Victoria opened a private firm in the heart of downtown Detroit, specializing in family law and criminal defense at the state and federal trial court levels. After years of witnessing overcharging requests for excessive bail and prosecutorial vindictiveness, Victoria realized that her efforts to end mass incarceration as a, quote, people's lawyer would never be sufficient. Effective change would require a transformation of the gatekeeper to the criminal justice system. Victoria ran for prosecutor in Wayne County. Victoria has represented hundreds of families across Michigan in cases ranging from child custody to murder. Victoria's work has been highlighted on CNN, Democracy Now!, The Guardian, Essence, The New York Times, The Appeal, the Detroit Free Press, the Detroit News, and local Detroit news stations Fox 2 Detroit, WDIV, that's the NBC affiliate, and WXYZ Detroit, that is the ABC affiliate. Welcome, Victoria Burton Harris, and thank you so much for joining our panel today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to share space with both you and Robyn on Politico Coffee. And it is also an absolute honor to share this space with our colleagues and partners in this work across Washtenaw County. And, I, like all the other panelists, am deeply passionate about this issue, excited to be able to share and learn this afternoon. And I'm deeply passionate about it because, quite frankly, I think all of us, we understand that this criminal legal system has been very intentional about bringing in marginalized people. Black folks and brown folks and poor folks, folks with mental illness, folks with substance abuse issues. And I'm a firm believer that if folks who are legislators and prosecutors using their discretion can be intentional for years about bringing people into the system, we can be just as intentional about doing something that will positively impact people as a result of that discretion and the power that our legislators have held and have exercised. And so when we, for instance, talk about how the war on drugs has been a total failure, and how it immediately makes folks go back and connect it to slavery. And you can't turn away from the disproportionate impact that it's had on Black and brown folks. Then you immediately say, well, what can I do with my power to fix that? And we have a responsibility with the power that we hold to do something about that. And I'm very happy that we are well on our way of doing just that, making sure that people who have been tangled up in this system can finally get off the wheel and can finally have meaningful opportunities, not just to survive, but to truly thrive. To have good employment, right? To not just have jobs, but to have careers, to not be cut off from living in certain places because of these records. And I understand, and I think I know all of us understand that when we talk about ending mass incarceration and reforming the system, if one believes that it can be reformed, this is the obvious next step. You can't go anywhere until you address the fact that the system has brought in so many people and spit them out, and now they are still living with that, and their children are feeling that effect, right? If you have a parent who has a record, then that means that they are precluded from living in certain places. That means that they are precluded from working in certain places, and then the child is therefore precluded from going to certain schools, right? Because of where they live. They're precluded from certain opportunities because their parents don't have access to the resources, because they don't have access to those good jobs and, you know, careers that they've been boxed out from having these convictions on their record. And I am very fortunate to be doing this work alongside my partner. And we say we don't do partner in crime anymore because we're prosecutors. So we say we're partners in justice. And I could not be in a better place to have this kind of power to do so much good. And Delphia, I promise you, like Ellie said, you don't have to worry about our office doing what the prior administration did. We are looking to pursue justice and not seek convictions. And we understand the impact that convictions have on folks. As a former criminal defense attorney like Nick, I have fought for years in trying to get people to get their records expunged. And I have wiped the tears from folks' faces when I have to tell them, you don't qualify. And they ask if there's anything that they can do. And I say, not right now, write to your congressperson. And start, you know, getting involved with organizations that are working to change the law. And so to be able, I'm sorry, got a whole lot going on in my house today. To be able to now sit in a position of power and to have a unit that we're building out in our office that will help further the work of getting folks back on track and expunging their records. It is nothing short of a blessing, and I couldn't be more happy. And I really look forward to this panel this afternoon. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Burton Harris, I call you Victoria because we know each other. And it's interesting that we're having this dialogue this afternoon because you do see opposite ends of the justice spectrum represented today in the form of the top defender for Washtenaw County and the top prosecutors for Washtenaw County as well. All the panelists look fantastic today, but Victoria, I really appreciate your striking outfit. And Robyn, with this, I will turn it over to you to introduce two of the panelists who actually were, all of the representatives and senators were instrumental in getting this clean slate law passed. It was a bipartisan effort, but we are particularly lucky today to have Senator Jeff Erwin on the panel, who Robyn will introduce, and also Representative Yousef Rabhi, who is a Democratic floor leader. Sherry Gay Degnogo, who's a former representative, was instrumental, I believe, in the One Bad Night, House Bill 4985. She was invited to the panel, but I think she had a conflict. And we have to acknowledge the late, great Representative Isaac Robinson, a personal friend of mine who worked so hard on getting Michigan clean slate laws passed. We lost him last year during the crisis, and our heart goes out to his family. And I'd like to dedicate this 2-hour special. Both Robyn and I are dedicating this 2-hour special on Michigan's clean slate law to the late, great Representative Isaac Robinson. Robyn, I turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Tracey. So yeah, I'm excited to introduce, I'll start with Senator Jeff Erwin and then go to Representative Yousef Rabhi. So Jeff Erwin, actually, we've done a one-on-one with him with Political Coffee, and we hope to get Representative Rabhi to do either one-on-one with us on Political Coffee or Robyn Legal. So Senator Jeff Erwin was raised in Sault Ste. Marie, but his family, they made their home in Washtenaw County. While a student at the University of Michigan, he took an organizing job with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. His work and leadership in the community led to a seat on the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, where he was instrumental in instituting a living wage policy, extending health insurance for uninsured workers, and protecting our natural resources. Erwin was then elected to the Michigan House of Representatives, where he served for 6 years. He led the charge to protect drinking water from high levels of toxic, dangerous chemicals, including 1,4-dioxin. He also introduced and supported legislation that supported better funding for education, protected our environment from polluters, and created jobs. He remains a strong voice for the rights of all Michiganders, including equal pay for equal work. He earned a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Michigan. He lives in Ann Arbor with his wife, Catherine, and their 2 children, Sylvia and Mackinac. I think, well, you can correct me because it looks like it's spelled the way as Mackinac. Yeah, so State Senator Jeff Erwin, if you want to give some brief remarks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Robyn, for the very generous introduction, and Tracey for the same. This has been one of the real bright spots in the legislature over the last 2 years, is the bipartisan work that's happened on clean slate and on criminal justice reform in general. One of the biggest things we did last year was to pass this clean slate package and to provide an opportunity for relief for as many as 1 million people here in the state who are going to be affected by these laws. And as Representative Lasinski said earlier, Michigan had a very restrictive expungement law that made it very difficult and expensive and uncertain for people to apply. And as a result, only about 6.5% of the people who were eligible applied. So we changed that law to both make it easier, to expand eligibility, and to make it automatic for a broad class of people. And so one of the other things we did last year was allocate some dollars that were left over actually from medical marijuana patients and caregivers who had been paying for their annual licenses, and use that to fund the computer work, the algorithms that are going to make this automatic expungement work. And that should happen by April of 2023. So, what's going to happen here on April 12th is immediately folks are going to have expanded eligibility and can apply. And I think that we'll get into some of the more details of that later. But then in a couple more years, there's going to be a broad automatic expungement that is just going to help hundreds of thousands of people who maybe don't want to go through the process of finding all their records and chasing them down at all the different courthouses. But I'll just finish by saying there's still important work to do. There were folks that were left out of the clean slate package. I think it was mentioned that first-time drunk drivers, that was one of the areas that some folks have focused on and it hasn't gotten done yet. An area that I've really been trying to focus on is making sure that resisting and obstructing arrest is included in this expungement opportunity. For those of you who are defense attorneys, you know this, but for the public, the way that charging for resisting and obstructing arrest has changed over the course of the last 30 years is dramatic. And now it is an add-on charge, and it really can be added on even when someone just isn't instantly completely compliant. And so, there's a whole lot of folks who've been caught up into that, and that's just another way I think we need to, keep pushing this, this policy forward. One final thing is that, when we saw this moving in the House and the clean slate bill started in the House, one of the things that I noticed, with the help of some juvenile justice advocates right here in Washtenaw County, people like Linda Edwards Brown, people like Jason Smith at the Michigan Center for Youth Justice, they helped me realize that this whole clean slate package was really for adults. And so in my office, we developed clean slate for kids, and we were able to actually get that passed as well as clean slate for adults, so that the similar sorts of opportunities for expanded expungement are there for folks who get their record as a juvenile, just like they're there for folks who get their record as an adult.
Okay, thank you, State Senator Erwin. And now, last but not least, we have Representative Yousef Rabhi. He is serving in his 3rd term representing the 53rd House District, which includes parts of the city of Ann Arbor and portions of Ann Arbor, Pittsfield, Scioto Township. He serves as the floor leader for the House Democratic Caucus. He was born in Ypsilanti and raised in Ann Arbor. Okay, shout out. I was born in Ann Arbor, raised in Ypsilanti. So hey, he attended Ann Arbor Public Schools, including Northside, Bach Open, Clake, and Huron High Schools. After graduating, he attended the University of Michigan, where he earned a degree in environmental science with a specialization in urban planning and ecosystem management. Throughout college, State Rep Rabhi worked for social change as an activist in peace, labor, and environmental movements. During his senior year of college, he took his passion for the Ann Arbor community and channeled it into his first political campaign, running for the County Board of Commissioners. He was elected as the board's working chair in his first term, where he led the board through many important decisions. In his second term on the board, he was elected to be the chair of the Board of Commissioners. It was in this capacity that he was able to help put the county on stable fiscal footing by passing the county's first balanced 4-year budget, earning the county a AAA bond rating for the first time in the county's history. So kudos for that. In his first term in the House, Representative Rabhi coordinated a bipartisan renewable energy legislation package, introduced legislation to protect our water, and introduced a plan for universal health coverage. He also served on the House Appropriations Committee and the Appropriations Subcommittees on Higher Education, Community Colleges, and the Department of Environmental Quality. So I'm going to turn it over to Representative Rabhi to give us some remarks before we turn it over to the panel for questions. So Representative Rabhi.
Thank you, Robyn. Really appreciate you, and thanks for inviting me to be here. So I am the proud sponsor of what has become Public Act 1, which was one of the 7 bills in the original expungement package. Actually, there were 6 bills originally in the expungement package, and Representative Robinson's bill was added in the 7th to cover some of those marijuana expungements as well. So I'm proud of this process since it began as one of the bill sponsors in this package. I'm looking forward to the conversation to go through the details of how this bill package is going to work, how this bill package is going to help people. One in particular had to do with the timelines around when somebody would be eligible for expungement. Reduced the waiting period for most misdemeanors from 5 years down to 3, so that folks would be eligible for expungement in a more rapid manner at the end of their sentences. So I was proud to be part of this effort. This bill package will change a lot, will address a system that has not worked for this state and this country, frankly, for too long. We are at a moment in history when we need to address not just the issues that we tackle in the package, but our entire criminal justice system as a whole. It is unjust, it is unfair, and it perpetuated a culture and a system of, frankly, that started with colonialism, that started with slavery, that started with Jim Crow, and it continues on to this day, a legacy that lives on in our laws throughout the state of Michigan and throughout this country. This is but a small piece of a larger puzzle in terms of the fight that we have ahead. And as we talked about earlier, it was mentioned, the driving offenses, OWI, those were finally passed out of the House. The governor did pocket veto them last time, but she's provided a list of conditions under which she would sign the law this year. I'm happy to talk about those when we get into the panel and what we need to be able to do in order to get that bill across the finish line. We have a lot of work to do still ahead of us, but let's celebrate our accomplishments. Let's look to the future. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you so much, Robyn, for having me on.
Thank you, Representative Rabhi. So yeah, for me, I have been doing these expungement forums, if you will, I want to say I was recruited probably about 2014, may have been a little bit earlier, by Judge Deborah Thomas. We call her the expungement queen. Last year, I decided to start partnering with the state reps and state senators on these issues, as I was aware that there was some changes on their way, and I thought it was important that we engage with them. And I know Tracey and I last year we did, we did some forums with, as I said, the late state rep Isaac Robinson, State Rep Ronnie Peterson. You know, I was definitely in regular communication with State Senator Erwin. And so this year, we did our first expungement event. This is what Black women lawyers did on February 4th. I did one on May 11th in Grand Rapids. And I just did one a couple days ago with the Deltas. But I felt, you know, again, I'm from Ann Arbor, so shout out to Ann Arbor. I felt it was very important that we come to my hometown and talk to the hometown representatives, lawyers, about this issue, and very much important to have the people who are helping to put the laws together and talk about legislative intent, but also start, you know, talking about folks, to the folks who are going to go into implementation, as we have Prosecutor Savit and you know, Victoria Burton Harris, Delphia Simpson. And Nick Roumel, who has also, you know, he's written some guidance for lawyers on adult expungements and juvenile expungements on ICL. So again, thank you all for being here. I know some folks might say, you guys got a lot of folks. Okay, we got a lot of folks, but this is some big, we've got some big changes here in Michigan, and we want to make sure that everybody has a good understanding of the law, and that we just start getting prepped and getting ready. I mean, I've had calls for the last couple of years. What's going on? When are the changes going to go into effect? So I'm excited, and you know, I hope that we can also partner with some attorneys. You know, there's some attorneys that will do it pro bono, some attorneys that'll do it for a fee, a reduced fee, so we can actually start really working to change people's lives. So with that, I'll start with the first question for this, and this is geared for the state reps and state senators. We're going to go back and forth with the state reps, state senators, and the legal experts, our lawyers. So I'll just say this: what was the legislative intent behind expanding the expungement laws? And yeah, so we can start with State Senator Erwin, and then we'll have Representative Lasinski and Representative Rabhi.
Yeah, well, briefly, I think that we touched on this, each of us, in our introduction, which is that, you know, we believe in second chances. We believe that the criminal justice system works best when folks have a chance to be rehabilitated, serve their, you know, whatever sentence, and then still be able to get back in to a productive role in society. So, you know, when people have gotten their lives back on track and they're keeping their lives back on track, we need to take away these barriers to employment, housing, and educational supports. And, you know, that was the legislative intent. And also, I would just key into what Prosecutor Savit said, which is that when you look at these systems closely, it becomes clear that public safety is actually promoted by giving people an opportunity to get back on track and to stay on track.
Okay, Representative Lasinski.
Thank you. And I think what you're going to hear is each of us building on each other. I think another important thing to add to this conversation is just how many people this affects. You know, in Michigan alone, across the nation, there are 70 million to 100 million people, almost 1 in 3 Americans, who are impacted by having a criminal record. When we look at that, that is nearly 1 in 3 people, U.S. adults, who've been arrested by age 23. When we look at what we're trying to do as a society, which is to have a common good, to have folks participating and reaching their full potential as citizens, as family members, as providers for their family, reaching their career and creative potentials, the impact of criminal expungement law changes. Our old law versus new law changes are radical, they're life-changing, and that is what the legislative intent was, to make these radical, life-changing opportunities for people who have been kept down by a mistake in their past, or quite frankly, by a system that judged them for an action harshly based on racial outcomes. And so we're trying to make radical change here.
Okay, and Representative Rabhi.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And there's a lot of discussion. I think different legislators had different intent going into this, and everybody kind of came to it from their own background. You know, for me, as one of the legislators that sponsored a bill in this package, my intent was really, again, to right a historic wrong, to fix a broken system that has been based on, again, a culture and a history of colonial exploitation, of slavery, of Jim Crow, of that has been built into our legal system. And this is one step in that direction. I was never under the illusion that we would solve all those problems in one fell swoop, but we're taking a step in the right direction. I think, again, this is a bipartisan package. And so, others may have come to this with a different background or a different set of beliefs in terms of why they wanted to get these bills moving forward. So I think there's different sets of legislative motivation that go into it. But I will say that from the very inception of this bill package and from the beginning conversations that we had many years ago, and then moving into early 2019, when the stars kind of aligned for this bill package to be able to become law, because we had the right person in the governor's seat. We had legislative Republicans that had a willingness to give this movement. And of course, Democrats have been fighting for this for many sessions, over and over and over, bringing this forward, but not really getting anywhere because the right people weren't in place. But suddenly when those conversations started to coalesce in early 2019, one of the main things that we were hearing in terms of why this was becoming such a hot issue is because people started to gain a better awareness about how few people that were able to get their records expunged actually would get their records expunged because of the massive barriers that existed financially, and having to go to court and having to pay an attorney, and petitioning for expungement is such an exhausting process that so many people, 95% of the population, wasn't getting their record expunged. And so that was the real, I think, impetus for the automatic piece of this, the Lighthizer bill in the package. But then all of these other things really built around that we were trying to do and make it easier and expand eligibility to more people, reduce timelines, make it so that more felonies and more misdemeanors would be eligible for expungement because our laws were so limited. I mean, one felony, no more than one felony, no more than 2 misdemeanors is what we used to have. And to be able to expand that to unlimited nonviolent misdemeanors that's fantastic. And it makes Michigan one of the first, one of the vanguard states when it comes to a lot of these issues, both on automatic and on the expanded eligibility for expungement. So I'm really proud to have been part of that work. But for me, that motivation really comes from that social justice, understanding of how our laws were created and how they've been implemented over time.
Okay, thank you, Representative Rabhi. I think Representative Lasinski had another point on that first question, a brief point.
Thank you. Representative Rabhi brought up something that's absolutely critical to this, how different people come to reform from different points of view and intention. And this is one of the places we have seen majority Republican control of both chambers now, one for almost 3 decades, one for a decade. And there was a cost concern. And so this was really a place where the Republicans' concern with budget and cost and wanting to reduce the cost of prison reform, we were able to bring as Democrats a social justice perspective to that to get this done. And so it's always looking hard for those opportunities where you may be coming at something for different, from different perspectives and different intentions, but where we can work together to get something done that's positive for our social justice values.
Okay, thank you, Representative Lasinski. So I'll turn it back to my co-moderator and co-host, Attorney Tracey Martin.
Thank you, Robyn. One important thing about the new clean slate law is getting an understanding of what expungement is. There have been several questions asked from social media, people on social media, and they want to know, well, what exactly is an expungement compared to a sealed record, compared to a set aside, compared to a dismissal, and where do pardons fit into the equation? If someone on the panel could jump in with a good working definition for lay people about what an expungement really is in Michigan.
Expungement means taking a criminal record and sealing it or hiding it from public view. So if your record is expunged, it means that when you apply for a job, housing, financial aid, or professional license, and the application asks for your criminal history, you no longer have to list the criminal offense that has to be expunged. And it also means that if employers and landlords and educational professional institutions search your criminal history, they won't be able to see the criminal offense that has been expunged.
Thank you, Victoria, for that. And then what about pardons? Where does, is there an intersection between expungements and pardons, or are they completely separate things?
Attorney Roumel, yeah, I see you looks like you
Nick?
want to respond to that.
I can jump in. So the first part of that question, anybody who is offered an opportunity to have a deferred sentence or a set aside or plea under advisement or whatever the name of it is, at the time of your criminal case, you should take it. Then you don't have to worry about expunging it 3 years later or whatever the time period is, and then leaving it up to a judge. Because remember, expungement isn't automatic. You can apply and it's always up to a judge. A pardon is like a Hail Mary. If expungement doesn't, expungement isn't available, you didn't get it set aside at the time of your case, you can apply to the governor. There is a process. I've done it once. You put together an entire package, and it is a long shot. It succeeds about as much as that 70-yard pass to the end zone with no time remaining. But it's available, sure.
Great, thank you, Nick. On that point, there was a question about if I apply for an expungement under the new scheme and I am turned down, is there an appeal process? Do you know, Nick, or anyone on the panel?
You can appeal it because it's a decision by a judge. If the judge made an error of law, for example, to incorrectly state, I don't think that's expungible under the statute, you could appeal that. But in terms of the judge's discretionary decision, that's a lot harder. An abuse of discretion is very hard to get overturned in a court of appeals. And one of the things that an attorney can help people with is, it's a 17-step process. It's a lot of bureaucracy. And you don't just walk into court and say, okay, I'm eligible, it was 3 years ago. You got to show that you deserve expungement to many judges. You got to show, you have a good work history. You've stayed clean if you had a substance abuse issue. You have letters of reference, perhaps. Those are all the things you want to sway the judge. But if the judge isn't swayed and it's just a discretionary call, like certain assaultive crimes, you have to notify the victim and they have the right to weigh in. The judge might say no. So unless it's an error of law, the judge screwed up the statute, you're probably at the end of the line.
Thank you, Nick. And also, with respect to the new scheme for Michigan's clean slate law, does it wipes out the criminal record if it's granted, but will it wipe out restitution or fees that are connected with the sentence, the original sentence?
So when something is expunged, it's not permanently deleted. Law enforcement, prosecutors, courts, certain agencies like MDOC, they can still see it. And if you were required to pay restitution, that still continues as well. If you were required to register for the Sex Offender Registry, still need to do that as well. So it's important that people understand that it's not just if you get something expunged, it's like it never happened. Unfortunately, it's not set up that way.
So people are still liable for paying restitution and any fees connected with that sentence. It doesn't wipe that out.
Correct.
Okay.
If I could say on that point too, that there were some legislators on the Republican side that actually voted against some of these bills because they wanted people to have to pay off their restitution before they would be eligible for expungement. And we didn't do that in the bill. And so they voted no. They wanted it to be even more extreme the other way. And so they voted no, but we didn't include that.
That's interesting. Thank you for adding that. Before we turn to the next question, there was a point that Victoria made about the Sex Offender Registry. You as a Chief Assistant Prosecutor, or perhaps Savit could comment, do you have any news on what the status of the Sex Offender Registry is in Michigan? I know a federal judge had declared it unconstitutional, and I think it temporarily stopped reporting for the Sex Offender Registry? Does anyone know?
So that is accurate, and not to avoid the question, but I think maybe the status of that may actually be best from our legislators, because a federal judge did strike it down as unconstitutional, and basically kicked it back to the legislature to make it constitutional. So I don't know what the status of that is up in Lansing, and maybe one of our legislators can update us.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Prosecutor Savit.
Yeah, thank you, Prosecutor. That's exactly right. A federal judge ruled that our SORA statute was unconstitutional and threatened that if the legislature didn't fix it, that he would try to fix it from the bench. And what ended up happening is late last year, a bill was passed to amend Michigan's Sex Offender Registry Act. It addressed, I would argue, a small portion of what the judge indicated was unconstitutional about our law. And now essentially, it's back in this situation where I don't think anyone knows whether or not our amended law is going to survive constitutional muster or not. But we did, in fact, amend it in reaction to the judge, which I think sort of keeps the issue in play until it gets litigated again.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator Jeff. Erwin, thank you so much. Okay, Robyn, I'll turn it back to you for the next question.
Yeah, before we ask the next question, did anybody else on the panel want to weigh in on any of the questions that were asked by Tracey? Anybody else? Okay, all right. So the next question I have is if we can actually get into what are actually some of, like, we know that the old statute, it was 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors. So if we can have somebody or some folks from the panel talk about what are some of the new changes for the new statutes that go into effect on April 11th.
I'd be happy to talk about that. So in addition to the Legrand bill, which expands, like you said, the number of felonies and misdemeanors that you can have on your record and still be expungible. As I said, there was my bill, which shortens the timeline for most misdemeanors from 5 years down to 3. The bill that Representative Dingell introduced was around the 1 bad night provision, meaning that if you committed multiple crimes in one evening or in one event, that those would be considered one for the purposes of for the purposes of the expungement process. There was the Pauline Wenzel bill, which that one included a lot of driving offenses, which were never expungible in the past. Those offenses would now be expungible with the passage of that when it takes effect on April 11th, with the exception of, as we were talking about earlier, they excluded drunk driving and OWI offenses. And we're dealing now with that separately this year in a 2-bill package. Bellino and Representative Yancey introduced 2 bills to make first offense OWIs expungible. The Robinson bill deals with certain marijuana misdemeanors, making those expungible, but that bill is also pretty important as part of this package as well. And then the Leutheiser bill, which creates the automatic process for expungement. Unfortunately, under that bill, the wait period is 10 years before records can be automatically expunged. But it at least creates a system whereby those records would be expunged automatically. And I'm probably forgetting 1 or 2 bills. Of course, there's the Irwin bill, which he talked about earlier. That was part of a separate package around juvenile expungement. So it's a pretty comprehensive package and it does a lot. And if folks want to jump in with what I forgot, that'd be great.
Representative Rabhi, I was ticking them off on my sheet as you went through, and I think you grabbed them. I think you caught them there. One of the ones that I wanted to highlight was the traffic offenses, and that may not seem like, compared to felonies or other items there that's significant, but it may be one of the more significant parts of this bill package that goes through. The vast majority of offenses that folks have on their records are related to traffic offenses. And we know that traffic stops have been used as part of systemic racism in order to frighten people, in order to stop people, in order to get people, and it have often resulted in people entering the criminal system through very, very low level, if not, quite frankly, blatantly false stops and follow-up actions. And so the inclusion of traffic offenses is very significant in this package, and really, really a strong point of pride. With the OWI, the operating under influence on the first time drunk driving offense, that has moved out of the House. And so that is a strong step that has happened there. So it has been able to move through committee, to receive a floor vote on the House, to move out of the House and into the Senate. As Floor Leader Rabhi mentioned, it is a 2-bill package, and it is also associated with a sunset on the blood alcohol content level, keeping that at the 0.08 level. That was one of the issues that was around why it was not signed into law last session. And so we do believe we've had those sometimes tough conversations with groups, mothers, MAD, mothers opposing drunk driving, and we know that having those conversations, working this through, getting everyone on the same page, making sure we still have strict limits on drunk driving, hopefully that will move it easily through the Senate and to the governor's desk again for a signature.
Yeah, the representatives did a great job. Let me just add a tiny bit to that, because they did a great job covering everything. Representative Lasinski is absolutely right. The driving with license suspended, driving without insurance, those two offenses alone affect hundreds of thousands of people. And just to delve a little bit more into what we did around cannabis, given the fact that we changed the law with Proposal 1 in 2018, there's a whole lot of folks, myself included, who think that why are we still holding people accountable for actions that are now legal? So what we did is we provided a law that says that judges shall expunge cannabis use or possession charges or convictions if it's shown that that individual was engaging in activity that's now legal. What we left out, though, we provided relief to about 230,000 people who have a cannabis use or possession conviction, but we left out about 25,000 people who have a manufacture of cannabis conviction or a possession with intent to deliver. Both activities which are now legal in the state of Michigan, I would point out. Finally, I just want to note that one of the things that was not included in this is that the Secretary of State has a whole separate set of records on your driving record. And so what we're talking about here is we're talking about eliminating the criminal conviction, but those records are still going to be part of your driving record. And if any of these convictions or record, or if your record was picked up as a CDL offense, if you're a commercial driver and you have a commercial driver's license and the offense was on your CDL license, that none of that is covered by this expungement. That was completely carved out of this. So just a little bit more detail, but the representatives did a great job.
Okay, and then Attorney Delphia Simpson, I just wanted to have you weigh in as our public defender about any of the questions that we've asked, or anything you have to say about the benefits of the new legislation?
Well, two things, and I have a question for Representative Erwin, and then, but I wanted to clarify, and I think Nick said this in his opening remarks about the fact that, yes, you may get this expungement, but employers may be able to find the arrest records, and so, charging records, and you need to be aware of that. And that many of the questions we receive from people after they're able to go through the long kind of process to get the expungement is, well, my employer or my landlord were able to see that I was arrested, and then I was denied access to, or that became a barrier. So I just want to make it clear that it doesn't wipe out any evidence of that you had an interaction with law enforcement. But one of my questions, I don't want to jump ahead, I had for Jeff, is about the juvenile clean slate and what that what that legislation or that potential legislation says, because I'm very interested in that. Sorry, I don't mean to.
That's fine. That's one of our questions. So
Beat me to the punch on that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we need to hear more about the kids' clean slate. We've got the senator who introduced those bills and got them passed, 681 and 682, I believe, Senator Jeff. What is a clean slate for kids? That was just signed into law by Governor Whitmer in January of this year. What is that? How does that break down for the people?
Yeah, well, as I said, when juvenile justice advocates and when I myself noticed that here we are moving forward on a really great policy around clean slate for adults to basically move Michigan from being a laggard on expungement to being a leader, we noticed that, well, juveniles are completely left out of this. Juveniles aren't convicted, they're adjudicated. It's a completely different set of laws, a completely different courts and everything. And so what we did is we put together a very similar package to provide clean slate opportunities to juveniles. Works very similarly to the adult clean slate in that if you have a non-assaultive crime, that you will have your record automatically expunged after a certain amount of time. And for a clean slate for kids, the way it works is that you have to wait 2 years after your 18th birthday, and you got to stay out of trouble, and you have to have committed the non-assaultive crime in the first place. And so those are the basic boundaries of that. It's similar to adults, except for the adults, they have to wait 7 years for a misdemeanor, 10 years for a felony. So we basically provided similar but better opportunities for people who picked up their conviction as a juvenile, under the understanding that that's the goal of the juvenile court in the first place, and that a lot of people make mistakes as juveniles that they wouldn't have made as adults. And so that's what we did with juvenile clean slate, or clean slate for kids.
And Senator Jeff, clean slate for kids, the new legislation, well, it's a new law, that includes, does that include traffic offenses?
Yes, as long as it would include traffic offenses. It wasn't a big part of the conversation because there's pretty narrow window that juveniles are driving there. But yeah, that would be included. The part that I did not mention, though, which I should have, is that in Senate Bill 682, what we did is we provided much greater opportunities for juvenile records to be confidential. In many states, in fact, in most states, juvenile records are not freely available for everyone to look at. And with Senate Bill 682, which is now a public act, Michigan has joined the states that have said that your juvenile record is not going to be available publicly as a matter of course.
Great, thank you, Senator Jeff.
I see.
Robyn,
Yeah, I see.
Robyn, oh,
I'm going
someone
to ask
else?
the question. I saw Nick had a question in the chat. Or Representative Lasinski, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add quickly that the issues around juvenile justice are really important right now, and we've opened the door with the expungement package for adults. We're also looking at, and I'm a sponsor on the key package that's looking at sentencing reform overall to make sure that those guidelines are fair. As we look forward with juvenile justice, one of the key partners that we've had in a lot of these reform efforts is the Pew Charitable Foundation. And they've provided the expertise and that nonpartisan expertise, as we mentioned before, to bring together folks maybe with different intentions for why they want criminal justice reform together. And so working with my counterparts in leadership in the Republican Senate and House and with the governor's office, we now have come to an agreement around an appropriations to bring in a facilitating party to do a deep dive into juvenile justice diversion and reform. And I'm very excited about that. We're looking forward to getting that passed through both chambers, that appropriation, and doing the deep and difficult work around juvenile justice as we've begun here to do around adult justice issues.
Okay, and Nick, I saw you had a question in the chat. Did you want to go ahead and ask your question of the
Sure.
reps?
We're talking about the drunk driving legislation. What will that include? Traffic misdemeanors? So as people may know, traffic offenses, often they're just civil tickets. They go on your driving record and you pay a fine. But some of them are misdemeanors, like driving with a suspended license, driving without registration on your person. And those are often crimes of economy, like you can't pay a ticket, you end up getting your license suspended, et cetera. And people will see that on your driving record and they can never be expunged. Is that part of the new package that's going to go to the governor for signature?
No, that's really part of the old package that the governor's already signed. And so those offenses are already part of the package that we signed last year. What we left out was that the driving while alcohol related stuff, driving while intoxicated. Yeah,
Or if the accident resulted in death or injury.
Thank you, Representative Rabhi. That's true.
Or as you said, if there's somebody with a CDL, those are really the only 3 instances in which they were excluded. I'm pretty sure every other moving violation is included now.
I gotta look at 3D again.
Yeah, that's my understanding. You know, you're right. We need to decriminalize poverty, and those offenses were one of the main ways that we do criminalize poverty and really make it even harder for people to get to jobs. And it just creates all sorts of problems. These offenses, as criminal offenses that hang over people's head forever, are really a big problem. And that was, as Representative Lasinski said, that was one of the quieter parts of this package, but it really affects hundreds of thousands of people. It's huge.
Yeah, no, I can
Hey.
speak to that. I'm getting calls from folks. It does make a big difference. And on the issue, you know, that part about the restitution and then one of the statutes, I know in one of the panels that we did the other day, Judge Thomas and other folks have encouraged us to, as attorneys, to try to challenge some of this stuff, because we know a lot of our clients, those of us that do criminal defense, I do indigent defense, it's hard for them to make that restitution. I mean, I see some of the judges are kind of like, if you make a good faith effort, then that could be enough. So it's like, we don't want to have that be a hindrance for people getting their records cleared, because it's like, if they could afford to pay all those fines and costs, some of them wouldn't be caught up in the criminal justice system in the first place. They wouldn't be committing crime because they wouldn't be having to steal or do whatever they're doing that gets them caught in the system. Okay. Does anybody have anything to add on this last set of questions before we move on?
Well, Robyn, I wanted a clarification from Senator Jeff Erwin about marijuana, and then I have a question, a philosophy question actually for Prosecutor Savit. But Senator Jeff, back to you before we move on from marijuana. As you stated earlier, the people of Michigan voted in recreational use of marijuana on December 6, 2018. There's a question out there from someone who asked, so does that mean that if I was previously convicted of a marijuana crime, that the 2018 election would have rendered moot? Can I apply for an expungement on April 11th?
Okay, so it really depends on exactly what you were convicted of, but the general answer is yes. So if your crime was possession, simple possession, or use, then you're going to be covered under a specific statute that was passed to deal with those crimes specifically. And what that statute says is that you can apply no matter how many you have, and that the judge shall grant your expungement if they can determine that what you did is now legal activity. However, if you have a conviction for possession with intent to deliver or for manufacture of marijuana, those are not included in that specific bill that dealt with that sort of shall expunge language. However, if you have a possession with intent to deliver or a manufacture felony, that is covered under the clean slate package. So if that conviction is over 10 years old, then you'll be eligible for automatic expungement through clean slate. You could also apply earlier as well, but it's not covered in the automatic.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for clarifying. And then for Prosecutor Savit, Ellie Savit, one of your colleagues, Grand Traverse County Prosecutor Noel Mogenberg, basically shares a sentiment that expungement is good, but she says that automatic expungement should only apply to misdemeanor offenses. She says, quote, "It causes me some concern, especially when it's not just somebody made a mistake, but somebody premeditated over a long period of time. That's different than if someone screwed up, quote, in a tough spot." I mean, what's your take on that, Prosecutor Savit?
So I disagree with that, we have. I think it's really important to consistently talk about what expungement is and what it isn't. we're not talking about people not facing consequences and not facing accountability for what they did. You still were convicted. You still were punished. Restitution is still there, as we discussed. Expungement is available for people that have done something in their past and since then have done everything right. They've done everything that we have asked them to do. They've stayed out of trouble. They haven't run afoul of the law again. So all expungement is allowing you to move forward with your life without being burdened by this criminal record that, as we discussed at the outset, can prevent you from getting housing, can prevent you from getting jobs, can prevent you from continuing your education. The question about whether it should be automatic or not automatic, I lean strongly towards the automatic camp, because when you have to go in and you have to apply for expungement and perhaps get legal assistance to do so, that means functionally that expungement is going to be a privilege that is available to wealthier people, more connected people, and poorer people are going to be largely out of luck. A private attorney, and I want to say we've got a great coalition here in Washtenaw that's working to expand access to expungements, but a private attorney might charge you $2,000 to go in front of a judge and get your record expunged. Now think about the main reason that people want to get a record expunged in the first place is probably because they're applying for a job, right? They are likely not going to have that $2,000 until they get the job, right? But they can't get the job until their record is expunged. So you see how it creates this perpetual cycle of poverty. So I don't believe in putting up these barriers to people getting their records expunged, especially because by definition, if you are eligible for an expungement under the law, we are talking about people that have stayed out of trouble, that have done everything we've asked them to do, and are simply seeking to move on with their life. And I think that's something that should be available to everybody, whether they're poor or whether they're wealthy.
Thank you, Prosecutor Savit. I'm just curious, based on this social media question, someone asked, if I get denied on an expungement, I can appeal. But if I succeed on getting an expungement granted, can the prosecutor appeal?
So the prosecutor has a chance to weigh in on the expungement, but the prosecutor is not a party to the case. So I don't believe the prosecutor could appeal. I want to make this clear for anybody in Washtenaw County that's watching this. We're not going to be in the business of contesting expungements. We believe in clean slates. We believe in second chances. So please do not feel like you shouldn't apply for an expungement because the prosecutor might weigh in against you. We are not going to be in the business of doing that. If you are eligible for an expungement, if you think you might be eligible for an expungement, apply. We're in the process, like I said, of working with a bunch of partners from across Washtenaw to get people access to legal help so they can get an expungement. We really want.
Thank you, Prosecutor Savit.
I have a question directed towards, it's actually, I would say, Prosecutor Savit, Attorney Burton Harris, and Attorney or Public Defender Delphia Simpson. And we've been talking with the legislators about the law and the implementation, their legislative intent, and we know it goes into effect in a couple of weeks. And I was just on a panel the other day with the Attorney General Dana Nessel. I know she said she's going to be traveling the state and doing some expungement fairs. So what I'm wanting to ask you is, are you guys going to be doing that as far as either having forums or fairs? I mean, you see, and the groups I'm affiliated with, we're doing forums. As far as we are still in the pandemic. So if I do anything, it's probably more inclined, like right now, to be virtual stuff. But I did want to see what your respective offices are going to be doing in light of the fact that we're, starting April 11th, people are going to be eligible. And I mean, I'm getting started. I'm getting people calling me. I'm getting the applications together. So I just wanted to see what your respective offices were going to be doing.
So, and I'll start, and then Ellie and Victoria can continue. We've been working, the greatest thing about having kind of the new prosecutors who are in Washtenaw County is they've been really wonderful partners. And when they initially came in, there was a group that was already working with Work First and Michigan Advocacy program and other groups working on expungements and doing fairs. And then they stepped in and gave the role of the prosecutor a more robust presence by coming in and willing to work with that group to organize fairs in a more efficient way for people to request and just see on the initial level whether or not they're eligible. And so I think those things are being planned for later when we can gather in person, as well as doing some Zoom efforts. But I'll continue. I'll let Ellie and Victoria continue.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll highlight is we've been working with the Public Defender's Office, and by the way, Delphia, right back at you. It's so great to have such a great partner in the Public Defender's Office. But we've been working with Delphia's office. We've been working with the groups that she mentioned, and one thing that we're working on doing in Washtenaw County is having a sort of no wrong door approach. So if you are on the prosecutor's website or the Public Defender's website or Michigan Advocacy website, you can provide your information and get connected to legal help that will assist you with an expungement and we're working in partnership on that. So I think the in-person fairs, the explanations, I'm really looking forward to getting back out in person and off Zoom. I love all of you, but I'd much prefer to see you in person than on a screen. And I think we will be doing some fairs and the like. And I've actually talked to the Attorney General about doing one in Washtenaw County. But beyond that, if you can't make it to a fair, if you've got childcare issues, if you're working during that time, we want to make sure that everybody has access to the resources that we're trying to pull together here, and just going online and being able to get connected with legal resources is one thing that we're working on in partnership with, and I'm excited to launch.
Also, to add to that really quickly, we have a wonderful interim director over our new Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit, Frances Walters, who we were able to steal her away from the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project. And Frances is preparing a number of documents to put out publicly and transparently on our website to share with other organizations that we are partnering with, so that we can break down pretty much what we are spending 2 hours talking about in a way that people can easily read and digest it, understand it, and say, oh, okay, I now understand, 1, what expungements are, 2, if I'm eligible, 3, how I can go about getting my record expunged. We are also planning to build out a network of partner attorneys that once folks have gone through the initial screening process and we can see that they are eligible, like Ellie said, we will not be objecting to it whatsoever. And we can also say, hey, we as a prosecutor's office obviously can't represent you and do, the actual application, but here are a list of attorneys that we have partnered with who raised their hands and said, hi, we can help do this. We want to absolutely help get people back on track and make sure that we get as many people that are eligible at, applying for this, because like it was said earlier, oftentimes people were eligible and they just weren't even applying. They didn't know that they were eligible. They didn't know what this process involved and how to go about doing it. We want to break all of that down. We want to break down those barriers and really reach out to help as many people as we possibly can.
Can I just want to say how huge that is? Because if having, I remember when I did my first expungement and how like crazy I thought the process was and how long and drawn out, and just the process of finding out all of your convictions and all, you know, all that is a challenge, and being able to have the prosecutor's office be able to help with that is huge. And then, you know, and then having attorneys for people who would not necessarily be able to afford to pay a private attorney, walk them through a really complex legal, unnecessarily so in my opinion, process in order to get an expungement, what I think they had earned because they had done everything that we've asked them to do. And so I just think it's really huge to have, you know, and I'm as surprised as anyone that I'm like, you know, rooting on the prosecutor's office, but it is really huge to have that support from a local prosecutor's office. I just wanted to say that.
That is great. And so if someone needs help, could they just hit up the Washington prosecutor's website? Is there a hotline? Where do they go?
We will be rolling that out in hopefully a month or two.
Okay.
And again, you know, we take in this county, we're working together and taking a no wrong door approach. So the idea is you can, you know, if you want to go to legal aid, you can go through legal aid. If you want to go through us, you can go through us. If you want to go through public defender's office, you can go through the public defender's office. We're committed to working together to make sure that folks are able to get an expungement. But in the interim, if you do have any questions, we're always happy to address them and sort of walk people through the process. As Victoria said, we've got somebody, Frances Walters, who is just a great force for good in our office, and she's over both conviction, integrity, and expungement. So if people do have questions, they should contact our office, and we'd be happy to assist where we can.
Yeah, and I would echo what Delphia has said about it makes a difference when you have a progressive prosecutor on the other side, even with the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, because, you know, as a part of the process, if having somebody who is going to be open and receptive to doing the expungement, it makes a world of difference. And I actually have a follow-up question for Attorney, it's actually for Attorney Roumel. Like, I know that you have previously provided guidance for attorneys on ICL. And for me, I look at this process as I'm kind of like, my background's anthropology. I'm kind of like a hunter-gatherer. So I have been gathering guides. Like there was a training that was done by Margaret Rabhi. David LeGrand has given me some information. So Attorney Roumel, will you be doing anything? I don't know if it may be as simple as us having you come back on Political Coffee or Robyn Legal and kind of walking us through the process for attorneys, because, you know, before the process, as for those of us that have done expungements, you know, you would meet with the client and you would have the client get the fingerprints. We do the iChat, when you get the judgment of sentence, you put the application together, you file it, they put it out to like maybe 3 or 4 months. You wait for the state police to give them back the response, and you wait for the Attorney General's response, and then you go into court. They ask the prosecutor to weigh in, and prosecutors have said, some of them have said yes or no, and then the judge makes the decision. They say, most of the ones I've had, actually all the ones I've had, they said yes, thankfully. And then we get the order to set aside conviction, and then the court is supposed to process it, but I also help to process it too, because some of the courts have glitches. So Attorney Roumel, will you be doing any efforts to help? Because, you know, I've already talked with some attorneys. They've said that they believe it's more complicated in the past.
It is a complicated process, thank you. And like you, we're ready to hit the ground running when the new law takes effect April 11th with some of the crimes that weren't previously expungible. I think there's a few things that an attorney can help with. First of all, most importantly, is can the conviction be expunged? And it isn't easy going through the law and the exceptions and the timing. making sure that the record is there. A lot of people just don't remember they have an ordinance violation when they were younger. That might be in a local court and it won't show up on the state's database, which could end up screwing up their chances. Because I've had, as you point out, and as Mr. Savit and Ms. Burton Harris have pointed out, they're not going to necessarily fuss with it. But the Attorney General has often come in and said, hey, wait a minute, this is not expungible. And they're the ones who might appeal if the judge makes a legal error. So step number one, an attorney can tell you, yes, you are eligible. Step number two, in order to help the person save money, I say, you do the legwork. You get the certified record of conviction from the court. You go get your fingerprints taken. You know, you do the mailing to all of these entities, the Attorney General, the prosecutor, it's state police, et cetera. And then, you know, go get your signature notarized. And then the other thing that is really important, and I touched on it earlier, is making sure that person puts the best package together for the judge to sway his or her discretion to grant the expungement. Like, this is what my life has been since I was convicted of that crime. This is why I'm a deserving of second, and we talk about second chances, but I know people have needed 3, 4, even 5 chances sometimes before they get on the right path. So it's really important. I believe that almost everybody can be rehabilitated, that they need that guidance, and an attorney can provide that guidance. I'd be happy to do workshops with you. You've done them in the past, Ms. McCoy. I'd be happy to do fairs and forums where we just go and say, here's a handout, here's what you need. I can be available. And, you know, being part of a firm, I have to charge something sometimes, but, you know, we can do it on sliding scale or low cost if the potential client does a lot of the legwork.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Roumel. Victoria, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, Nick hit on something really important, and he said as much, that, you know, one of the keys that a lot of folks don't know and understand is the package that you should put together to sway the judge. So when I was a defense attorney and I did, you know, a lot of these expungements, I would tell people that would come in, and I would even just do the math and say, well, you're not eligible right now, but you can be eligible later on down the road. I would say, here's what I need you to do now. I need you to make sure that you are, you know, active in your community. And they oftentimes would say, like, well, what does it mean to put together a nice package? What does the judge look for? And I would guide them. If you are a member of a church, I want you to get involved in you know, some ministry within the church. If you have a child that's playing sports, I need you to get involved and start coaching, you know, one of those sports teams. Get involved in your child's school. You know, I really need you to package yourself and prepare to package yourself in a way that it makes it hard for the human being reading this application that sits in a robe to say no to you. I need you to really work on, you know, making sure that you have a demonstrated record of showing that you have turned your life around. You're not the same person that you were when you committed the initial offense, and that takes time. A lot of judges will say, oh, you've just started doing something with your life in the last 30 or 60 days, as opposed to a judge looking and saying, wow, you have letters from your community members, different organizations, your child's school, your church, whatever it may be, and they go back 2-3 years. So this is very clear to me that you have a demonstrated track record of, you know, showing that you have truly been rehabilitated. You're not the same person, and you are definitely worthy and deserving of, you know, me granting you the second chance and going ahead and expunging your record. That is so important, because I have seen so many judges look through petitions and applications, and, you know, everything is there that should be there, but the judge just is not swayed. And my former clients, you know, they wouldn't understand it because they had tried to do this on their own without guidance of, hey, here's the key. You got to know who your judge is and what makes them tick and what they care about. And then you got to prepare to do that. And that oftentimes is going to take longer than just 30 or 60 days. And that's very important. And I want people watching this to know that.
That's great. And I understand that there's actually a new form out. It all begins with the initial form. I think it's form MC227. I understand it's up on the scale website, State Court Administrative Office.
Yes, I've received a copy of it. I probably will put, I'm sure we'll put it on our Robyn Legal, and once we launch our Political Coffee website, we'll have it on there so that the public has that form to view. And I know, I have my legal assistant on here, Edward Dance. He has reached out to the governor's office, so they have put on some, they said that the governor's office and Dana Nessel's office will be updating their websites to make sure that there's expungement information available. Ed, did you want to weigh in on that?
So basically what I have heard from the governor's office, or actually, I think the best response I got was from the Michigan AG's office. Basically, they're having people who currently are looking to get expunged send in the old form. So the former documentation for expungement, and they're going to hold on to those documents and then analyze them and apply the new law to it. So at least that was the conversation I had with one of the attendants at the AG's office. But overall, that is the process that they're saying. But the new form as of now is not available to normal clients or anyone that's looking for expungement at this time.
Yeah, it's not available to the public right now?
No, it is. That I just found out that on the 25th, it is now available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
it
things
is.
have changed
I know
a little bit.
Yeah, I'd had you call, and when we called initially, the Dana Nessel's office, they said that they would still go forward with the old form, but now I just got, because we have one of our Vanzetti members, Shayla Fletcher, she actually sent us a copy of the new form. So they said that they were waiting to put the new form out, because I guess they were saying they were worried about a lot of people trying to apply, but I mean, I'm like, I don't know why they're saying that, because even when you apply, the courts usually put it out 2 or 3 months. So it's not like you're going to just apply for expungement now and you're going to get a court date and you'll be in front of a judge. But Ed, while we do have you here commenting, because I've had you exploring these expungement issues, watching videos, we've had discussions about it. Do you have any questions for the panelists? I know you're about to go to law school, and this is a new area. Do you have any questions that come to mind for any of our panelists about these expungement laws?
So one of the things I'm particularly concerned about is the assaultive crime aspect of the legislation, which is not necessarily given the same leeway in comparison to other crimes when it comes down to the expungement legislation. So I definitely understand that there is like a certain level of discretion that needs to be applied with assaultive crimes, but I think at the same time, there will be instances where you have individuals who happen to have like a track record of a couple of years of where they are actually showing like good and substantive like reforming ideology and whatnot, and their actions in the community can show that they actually do want to change something in their life. So I think to myself, is there any like discussion, and I think this is more of a question to the legislators, is there more of a discussion of seeing what we can do to expand the assaultive crime label for the legislation, or are Republicans budging? Because I think that's partially somewhat of the issue a little bit too.
So I can jump in for a moment just on what is an assaultive crime and the difference between the old law and the new law. But Yousef, if you're Floor Leader Rabhi, if you're ready for this one, I just have something from Cynthia here that lays it out if you like. So the old law or the new law does offer an expanded list of assaultive crimes that are included. First demeanor, misdemeanor assault, first offense, misdemeanor assault or domestic violence, first to third degree home invasion, some low level incidents around child abuse, intentionally discharging a firearm for a vehicle, dwelling or occupied structure, unlawful imprisonment, stalking, and some other felony convictions there. So when this bill did go through, and when the bill package did go through, there was an expansion of the definition of assaultive crimes. And it's fairly technical. And we can follow up with more details there if you like, or get that listing out to everyone on the panel.
Okay, yeah, Representative Rabhi, could you speak to that? I mean, I'll speak, what I will say is, as I was reviewing it, I saw that you now can expunge up to 2 assaultive crimes, but like Mr. Dance has said, I've had situations where people make mistakes and they might have 3. So, and when they were younger, and then it's 20, 30 years later. So can you speak to that issue? And I do see a note from Senator Erwin saying that we can't use the new form till the 11th. So I do want to clarify. I was not saying that anybody's going to use the form, because I'm in the woods right now with my clients. We're pulling the iChat. We got to get a copy of the judgment of sentence, and we're trying to get fingerprints. So I was not saying, no, you need to use the form after the, I mean, I think the 11th is on the weekend anyway, but I'm just saying that if for those of us that are in the preparation process, it helps to have the form, have it notarized, get the fingerprints, get everything ready to go. And I mean, you know, and then each court, you know, I have done 1 expungement on Zoom. So we're gonna have to figure out which courts are letting us do this on Zoom and which courts are we gonna have to wait for them to open up again. So Representative Rabhi, could you come speak to that assaultive, the question about the assaultive issues?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the bottom line here is that, you know, I think many of us on the Democratic side wanted the list to be more expansive. We wanted actually to have an unlimited number of, you know, well, in our ideal world, we would have had more felonies under the allowable level for expungement. We wanted this bill package to be a lot more expansive than it ended up being. But we came up against the political realities of the legislature, which didn't really allow us to be as expansive as we wanted to. So that's why there was some restrictions about, you know, the assaultive crimes and so on. But I think that there can be further conversations about it. But, you know, my sense is that it's kind of a non-starter for a lot of our Republican colleagues to allow for some of those to be, you know, expungible. And so I think that there's a lot of other opportunities that we can be looking at in terms of other areas of the law where we can reform, you know, for criminal justice purposes that don't involve those assaultive offenses. But I just think it's going to be an uphill battle on a lot of these things with our Republican majority in both chambers. And that's really what it came down to with this as well. We had to ratchet back some of the things that we had initially wanted to do within that. And then as far as the limits, you know, in terms of for automatic expungement, the 2 felonies and the 4 misdemeanors, of course, not including the any misdemeanor that's punishable by 93 days in jail or less, that you can have an unlimited number of for automatic expungement. Like I said, and this is answering your question, Robyn, you know, that we had initially hoped that we could have an unlimited number of misdemeanors be automatically expungible, regardless of how of what level the misdemeanor was, and same with felonies. Frankly, we were hoping to push for much more than what we got. Well, we did push for much more than what we got, but it's one of those things where you have to advocate for, you know, an ideal, and at some point you have to, in order to get it passed, you have to find a middle ground. And I think the middle ground that we found was actually much more progressive in some ways than I would have expected. So I'm happy with where we got, but it doesn't mean that the work is done. And we do have to keep pushing the envelope to try to expand the number of misdemeanors, reduce the wait times, and so on and so forth. So we got work to do still.
Okay, thank you, Representative Rabhi. It looks like Senator Erwin wants to weigh in, and then I will turn it back to Tracey. I know we are we're pressed for time. We want to be very respectful of our panelists' time. So Senator Erwin.
I just wanted to share that for those listening and for all the attorneys on the call, one of the things that was really valuable to me throughout this process was being able to interface with Attorney Robyn McCoy and get some feedback on just who was being left out. And as Representative Lasinski and Representative Rabhi indicated, you know, Democrats were fighting to cut more of those people in, but ultimately it was a you know, a political compromise that had to be made because we wanted to pass these bills. But I just want to take a moment to thank you, Robyn McCoy, for the help that you gave me in my office in identifying some of those holes that we worked to try to shore up. The one that I made an amendment on, not to beat a dead horse, was resisting and obstructing. That was one that I just really felt was unfair to be coded as an assaultive crime, but it's not the only one.
Yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir on that resisting, obstructing, because I'm just like, most people, it's counterintuitive. This whole thing, they don't know, you're getting arrested, you're shocked, and you don't know that if you pull away that could be considered resisting. And I just feel like that's kind of a tag in, the police are called for something else, and then they throw that in there, and then you could get a felony, and the public doesn't even know about it. So yeah, no, I appreciate your efforts, Senator Erwin, everybody's efforts. So Attorney Martin, I know we got like a couple minutes to go. Or did somebody else want to weigh in before we?
Just wanted to add quickly that part of the dynamics in terms of why we weren't able to go as far as we wanted to is, to be perfectly honest, there's a lot of interest groups in Lansing that weighed in heavily on this legislation. Groups like PAM, the Prosecuting Attorneys of Michigan, and the Sheriff's Association, and other police associations that really tried, we wanted to go all the way here, but they were really wanting us to be, somewhere, in the middle. And so that's why having, progressive prosecutors like Prosecutor Savit, who are now going to be joining this conversation, is really important. And that's why all our county prosecutors across the state have a role to play. And so if you live in a county that's not Washtenaw, you have an elected prosecutor and somebody that you can go to and say, hey, this is important to us. And next time we take a crack at this in the future, if the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan is more progressive and can see this in a different lens, maybe they'll be less resistant to pushing back on some of the progressive reforms that we want to make. And so getting Prosecutor Savit at the table is an important first step in that process, but we need to expand it statewide.
Right. And then before I turn it back to Attorney Martin, I know I have asked in other panels, so I'll bring it up. My assistant has reminded me of this issue that I had, because it's like, again, we're making progress. We got the first tier people, we got the new tier with the new law, but I still have the third tier people. I can't tell you, I have like people calling me that don't qualify. We've got the new law, it's expansive for more people, but there's still that third category of folk. And I have reached out to the governor's office about doing mass pardons. I know other states, California, Virginia, they've done mass pardons. So if our elected officials could speak to this issue of what do we need to do to try to talk to the governor, or have you talked to her about this? Or I mean, again, this is like a village approach to talk about mass pardons for people that maybe they haven't had any new offenses in 5, 10, 20. I have people that it's been 30 years, but they don't qualify under this new legislation.
Well, I've talked to her about it specifically as it pertains to marijuana offenses, and the fact that we still have people in jail, in prison for offenses that are now legal. And so I've had a conversation with her directly about that. And there is an effort underway. There's a number of groups actually that are really pushing this right now, and I'm joining my voice to that effort definitely, and wanting to get her to act on that.
And I echo Floor Leader Rabhi's statements there. I had the opportunity to talk to the governor of Virginia, the now former governor of Virginia, who is making that effort, and all the obstacles and roadblocks that were thrown in his way. They ended up saying he had to personally sign each one, and he just took thousands of them a day and sat and was signing them one by one. So we know that the opposition to these types of actions will take extreme efforts to make sure that it doesn't happen, and absolutely supportive and working to understand how the other states were able to mount those challenges and to make it happen.
I think those are great efforts to try to get some sort of mass pardons for folks that maybe are caught in some of these big pools of folks who have a criminal record, and that's important. An area that I've really been focusing on with the governor is that we've got thousands of people in the Michigan Department of Corrections custody who are there for long or indeterminate sentences and will never be eligible for parole. But if you look at what their original offense was and you look at how long they've been there, I think that they're excellent candidates for release. And I've really been focused on a particular segment of women at the Huron Valley Correctional Facility down here just south of Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor. And we've got, somewhere, maybe 100 or so women that are in there who've been there for 20 or 30 years. They're over 55. They've done long stints in prison, and their original offense was that they murdered or caused to be murdered their abuser. If
Oh,
those women were to go to court today, that evidence would be considered a mitigating circumstance. But when these women were sentenced, that evidence was considered motive. And I just think that that's a group I've really been focusing on with my communications to the governor's office for pardons, because I think it's a large group and I think those people need justice. And I also am very concerned about the conditions at Women's Huron Valley, and getting some of those folks out would be an additional assist to improving the programming, the classifications, the security, and the conditions for the folks who stay there.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that, Senator Erwin. And I know that we're about to wrap up, but there are a couple of burning questions from social media. Someone asked, and this might be a question for Attorney Nick Roumel, but anyone with the knowledge, feel free to jump in. What are my chances of getting a green card with or without an expungement? I had a low-level fraud charge, low dollar.
Not really my area. I can tell you that any criminal history will be negatively viewed by immigration. That would be my sense.
Okay, so not looking good. I know that some offenses are considered, well, they're considered differently in the constellation of immigration law. So the person may be able to get an expungement, but that doesn't mean they're going to be able to get a green card. A correct assessment?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier too, immigration, it doesn't matter for INS purposes whether it's been expunged or not either. They're looking at
Really?
the underlying conduct, right?
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And then someone who's interested in applying for law enforcement, I want to apply for the FBI. I need an expungement. If I get it, will they still be able to see it on live scan?
my understanding is yes, but does anybody else want to weigh in on that? Even though it gets expunged, they still have a non-public record of it.
Right. Oddly, I can,
Thank you, Delphia.
that when you're applying for law enforcement, they can see everything, and you should just, even if you do get the expungement, you should list it and be able to explain it. I think your application would be, it would be detrimental for your application, even that you got the expungement and you don't say that, you know, that you had a conviction. I think that's a death nail to your application. I think you live for another day if you put it down and you're very open and very clear about what happened in your background.
Explain it away and then move on as to why you think you're a good candidate for
Right.
the FBI.
List everything, right?
Okay, great. And then on that note, someone asked, what happens to my fingerprints after I get an expungement? Where do they go? Do they stay with law enforcement? What happens?
I mean, I know typically what happens, you give me when I do my part of the application, we submit the information to the state of Michigan, they run a lien, and then we get the results back. Like they do, it's more substantial than the iChat. So they have that information they use the card to do that background check. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on to actually what happens with that physical card after that. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I think it's kept non-public.
Right. Okay.
Not public. Okay, great. Thank you for that, Nick. And then is it true that, well, here's another question. Should I sit back and wait until December 30th, 2022 to get an automatic expungement when that kicks in? I guess it really depends on the set of circumstances and the eligibility, right?
Right. I would say, yeah, it depends. I have some people, as you know, like in Wayne County, you have the Clean Slate initiative, you have Lakeshore Legal Aid. Some people, when they call me, I will, if they're eligible, I refer them over. But then some people are coming to me and they're like, no, I want on that issue about waiting until the automatic expungement comes into place. Some people are saying, no, they need jobs now. They are hindered right now. So they would rather petition to try to get it expunged as opposed to waiting for the automatic expungement, waiting for that. Oh, and when you say December too, I know that's what the governor had said, that even though they said October it goes into effect, they said, I think it was something recently that the governor's office said that they may not have it ready to roll out till December of 2022. So I have people calling me now. So I guess it really depends on the person. Like if they're employed and they can afford to wait till they can get the logistics worked out, fine. If they can't, then try to see if you're eligible, if you're indigent to do it, or, as I said, there's some lawyers that may do it pro bono, or I work for a firm, so we do it for a fee. It's a reduced fee, and, we try to work with folks. And I've been looking into starting a nonprofit so I can have donations given, because I don't like turning anybody away,
Right.
yeah. So.
Yes.
Just to be clear too on, I want to remind folks that there is a different wait period for automatic expungement. So depending on when you completed your sentence, if you have multiple felonies that you're trying to get expunged, it's a 7-year wait period for petition. 5 years if it's one felony, 3 years if you're talking about misdemeanors, non-assaultive. Most misdemeanors are covered after 3 years, but for automatic expungement, it's a 10-year wait period for felonies up to 2 felonies, and it's a 7-year wait period for up to 4 misdemeanors. So make sure that you're still going to be eligible within that time frame, and that you don't, that the number of felonies and misdemeanors that you have would still count towards that.
Right. That's why I think that's where it makes a big difference to talk to an attorney that is, is knowledgeable about this area, to look into this, because, it's like, we know the new law, it's 3 felonies, it's unlimited misdemeanors by petition. But then as you've indicated, there's for automatic expungement, certain felonies, certain things, misdemeanors, you're eligible, certain ones you're not eligible for automatic expungement. Yeah. So, okay, so I see again, we are past the time frame.
Robyn,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tracey.
Robyn, to close out, there's a question about language in the various legislation that allows the agencies a 2-year implementation period. So is it true that we really won't see the effects of the new clean slate law in Michigan until maybe 2023, 2024? Anyone on the panel?
That was what we were talking about with automatic expungement. There's a 2-year implementation to put the computer system in place, but the rest of it goes into effect on April 11th.
So we could see some statistics sooner than 2023. The impact on Michigan, we could see it even sooner than that.
That's certainly possible. What I've been telling people is to expect the automatic sometime around April 2023.
Okay.
But the dollars have been programmed. If the RPs start moving forward and we get that technology firm in to start doing that work now, there's a chance that they could go more quickly. So some of us are going to be bird dogging that process to try to make sure that we get a good team on that and that they do move quickly, because I'd like to see it happen more quickly. But I think that's the April 2023 is the time I've been telling people is a reasonable expectation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Senator Jeff. Thank you, Representative Rabhi. Well, I think that wraps it up in terms of the questions, Robyn.
Yes, yes. I want to thank our wonderful panelists. Thank Congresswoman Dingle. We've had Representative Donna Lasinski, Representative Yousef Rabhi, State Senator Jeff Erwin, our prosecutor, Ellie Savit, Victoria Burton Harris, our Assistant Chief Prosecutor, Attorney Nick Roumel, Delphia Simpson, our public defender. I've made sure I've listed everybody correct. I don't want to leave anybody out.
We got everybody.
We got everybody. And so this has been Political Coffee. I don't think I may have mentioned it, but I have my mug today. I've had tea, and it's all things are possible to those who believe. Mark 9:23. And Tracey, what do you have? You have a multicolored mug?
Yeah, rainbow power. I don't know if you can see it with the green screen, but yep.
And are you drinking tea or coffee?
I got tea inside.
Okay, and yeah,
Put
so
on the political tea, not the coffee today.
right. Okay. And I want to thank our webmaster, Kyle Caldwell. You see, he's holding up, he's got some water, and my legal assistant, Edward Dance, for reaching out to everybody and helping to put this together. So again, we thank you. We know this is 2 hours, been long. We don't normally have it at 2 hours. It's like maybe it'd be a half hour, but this is a very important issue. So thank you all for your time. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and be blessed.
Be blessed.
you,
Have a good one.
everyone.
Thank you guys for your panel.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, panel.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you. Keep fighting.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.